I think you made wearing nail polish cool for hoopers. How did that start?
It started in COVID. I randomly decided to do it. I think I saw Jordan Clarkson do it, and I came downstairs with some lavender nail polish, and I went in my mom's drawer and got it.
I'm 2 days into college and I'm 3 lectures behind. There's this guy, let's name him Colin. He said he wants to be mine.
We had McCain as a top 10 player in this draft, and someone who, we've got a lot of roster opportunity. So, if you can get a player who is hopefully rotation ready at a very young age. I don't want to put pressure on him, but we think he's got that. He's got the improvement curve. He's got the approach. He's obviously got a skill that the coach will turn around on the bench and say, hey, I need that skill.
We need to talk about Jared McCain, the prohibitive favorite for Rookie of the Year. What did people miss? Don't you worry. This did not turn into a Philadelphia 76ers podcast overnight. This is still a Raptors podcast. But we like to talk about deeper things, and today we are going to examine bias. We're going to talk about why you, I, and pretty much every single human being is fallible to inherent biases, how we sometimes overlook certain players because of qualities that we hold dear and near to our hearts that they do not possess. Jared McCain has seen a lot of this. You right here, Mark Coop. You think you're cool? You're not cool. You're not cool. You're uninvolved. You're a caveman. Okay? And I don't mean to put you on blast, but I kind of do, right? Look at this. Come on, man. Grow the hell up. See, the truth is that a lot of people have been pushing this narrative that the reason Jared McCain was not more highly touted by scouts, he was consistently outside the top 15 in a historically weak draft. Currently, Jared McCain, per 100 possessions, is scoring 35 plus points per game on 62% true shooting. To put that into context, those marks would best Klay Thompson in his prime. He is the epitome of efficient three-level scorer. What's wrong with him? I'll point to a few obvious things. Number one, he's undersized. There's your first bias. He's 6'2". He doesn't have super long arms to compensate. 6'3", 6'3" wingspan. So he's a little bit undersized. He was a bit of a combo guard, but his scoring was evident at Duke. This is a dude who shot 47% from the field, 42% from three. He's an elite shooter. But I don't think that's why people passed on him. And I don't think that's why people were lower on him. And it was interesting to see Sam Vecenie, the Athletics Sam Vecenie, who notoriously called Scotty Barnes a zero-level scorer. It was very interesting to see him address this online. And he sort of just pushed aside this idea that maybe, just maybe, teams and scouts and Vegas were lower on Jared McCain because they inherently believed, well, I don't know what they believed. I can't speak for them. But look at the image and tell me what you believe. Tell me what they probably believed. I think a lot of people believed, I'll tell you people that I talked to, believed that he would never get along with an NBA locker room with all his TikTok dances and his painted nails and his singing. And some of his dances are not your normal TikTok dances for a man. Some of them are singing to women's songs. They're moving in what people would consider effeminate ways. And people were like, there's no way that an NBA locker room will accept this guy. But I'll tell you one guy who will accept this guy. And it was a guy who was a bit of a hero of mine 12 to 15 years ago. And that's Daryl Morey. So let's talk about Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey, Masai Ujiri, and people who see through the biases. Daryl Morey once said that he had a rule for his scouts that you couldn't make a draft comparison to a guy of the same ethnicity. So if it was a white guy, you couldn't compare him to a white guy. If it was a Chinese guy, you couldn't compare him to Yao Ming. You had to go outside the box. And how often do we see black players being compared to black players, white players being compared to white players, European players being compared to other European players? This is just generally speaking how our minds see and process information. So it was hilarious to see Sam Vecini say that he didn't think that the nail polish and the TikToks had anything to do with Jared McCain falling to 16, when that's exactly why Jared McCain fell to 16, is because the people who passed on him refuse to accept why you overlooked him. Masai Ujiri is a great example of examining one's biases. There are a lot of players that Masai will take a chance on. Older prospects, guys who come from the JUCO ranks, a guy like a Jonathan Mobo. What did people see in a Jonathan Mobo? They saw a 6'6" center. What did the Raptors see? They saw a twitchy wing who could shoot at some point. What did most scouts, some scouts, at least the ones drafting up those mock drafts, what did they see in Scotty Barnes? They saw Draymond Green. What did the Raptors see? They saw a guy who was a few years away from being a predator wing and probably an elite 3-level scorer who could pass the ball like the best of them. These are just, it's an ability to see past it. Now, here's one way to look at Jared McCain, and that's the way most people on X, Twitter, Reddit have chosen to look at Jared McCain. He's a fruitcake. They slander him. They swear he's gay, even though he has a girlfriend. They think that the painted nails are a distraction. They think he's a diva, an attention whore. That's what they think of him. I'll tell you what I thought when I saw Jared McCain. And I'm not someone who's ever painted my nails. I am straight. But here's what I saw. I saw a person who was unrelentingly confident in themselves, because you'd have to be, wouldn't you? In order to take this level of pushback for the nails, for the dances, for the singing, to be the constant butt of the joke, to have people booing you and calling slurs at you and writing mean stuff on your socials, and to keep doing it, man, you got to have some nerves of steel. You know who else has nerves of steel? Grady Dick. Grady Dick, I believe, posed for a y'all. I mean, you can imagine the jokes, right? Grady Dick, the last name, etc. So a lot of people would chant those names at him. And so what was the Kansas newspaper? Big Dick Energy. And he posed for it. He had no problem. He has no problem laughing at himself. That's a very positive trait. That's a very positive trait. Him wearing that red suit put such a bullseye on him at the draft. If you'll recall, Grady Dick's 2023 draft fit was the butt of a lot of jokes and a lot of criticism, but also a lot of fanfare. Some people really liked the fact that he decided to really put the bullseye on his back. But some people didn't. What I saw with Jared McCain was a person who was unrelentingly themselves. Grady was also famous for his TikTok dances and his Donald Duck impressions. Grady and Jared are cut from a similar cloth. They're both movement shooters who maybe on first glance don't look like they're supposed to be really good NBA players, but they have great movement patterns. I'll tell you another thing that I saw. Okay, sure. You know, he's moving and swerving on the dances, and a lot of people are like, this makes me mad. And they turn away and they say, I hate this guy. The Sixers are going to hate this guy. Philly's going to hate this guy. He's an attention whore, as I said. You know what you're not seeing? How much flexibility and the ability to dance in general is such a positive indicator for a guard or a lead initiator in the NBA. What manipulates the defense? Your hip flexors. The fact that you can move like that as a 6'2" guy, generally speaking, is going to have a positive correlation. I'll guarantee you, all the best ball handlers, probably great dancers. All the nimble bigs who can, be very fleet-footed on the perimeter are probably great dancers. Dancing and basketball go hand in hand. They do. Well, the inherent ability to dance. I'm not saying all great players dance, and I'm not saying all great dancers are great hoopers. I'm just saying there's a positive correlation here. And leave it to guys like Daryl Morey and Masai Ujiri to spot the trend, to pick up these underrated guys, because everybody else is too biased to look past their own biases. Another bias that is inherently existent across sports, it's an African bias. A bias against an inherent mistrust of prospects born in the continental Africa. They have a mistrust of it because it's foreign to them. They have allegations in their mind from years ago of fake birth certificates. And basically, if you need to look at any prevalent North American example of the fake birth certificate movement, Barack Obama had half the country believing he was not an American citizen and that he had a fake birth certificate. This bias exists. We have biases towards so many things. We have biases towards short people in the NBA. We have biases towards fat people in the NBA, or people who look fat, maybe people who don't look very fleet-footed or athletic. Why do you think 40 teams passed on the league MVP, 3-time league MVP, and definitely a top 15 player of all time, Nikola Jokic? What did they miss? What did the Raptors miss? The Raptors missed him twice. They passed on Nikola Jokic twice. What did they miss? Did they see the nimble feet? Did they see the daring attempts to pass? Or did they just see a fat guy? A fat guy who was drinking multiple Coca-Colas every single day as a kid. A guy who loved his horses from Serbia. Didn't speak English very well. What biases do you have in your life when if you're someone in a privileged position of being hiring people, do you hire the right people or do you hire consistently the wrong people? What are you looking for? Are you looking for someone who agrees with you? Are you looking for someone who disagrees with you? These are all biases. Certain people are very agreeable. You tell them, that you like something, they're very quick to sort of match your energy and say, yeah, I like that too. And that makes you feel good. If you're biased, if you have a confirmation bias, how do you react to somebody who pushes back? No, I don't like that. Oh, you find them disagreeable. I don't like that person. Maybe people who are disagreeable are good for us. It's interesting. I remember a clip from Jonas Valanciunas when he was in Lithuania, and he, as a 7-footer, was able to dance so well. I don't know if y'all remember the clip of Jonas Valanciunas dancing, but it was a very positive trend for his basketball future. I got very excited by that. There's a lot of things that, as I said, inherently we don't like. We don't like older prospects. The Raptors will take your older prospects. Some people don't like foreign-born prospects. Some people don't like prospects who don't shoot well. We have a bias, And this whole conversation around Davion Mitchell the last 2 days has got me thinking, do I have a bias? Or did they have a bias? And there was a comment earlier today that I read that got my mind spiked, which was they want to see Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry so badly, right? Or they want to see Kyle Lowry so badly. And that's the thing, right? When you have a player like a Michael Jordan who looms so large in your mind, so large, the highlights, the championships, the dunks, the dunk contest, and you see a James Flight White, shout out to James Flight White, jump from the free throw line, your mind starts to wonder, is this the next Michael Jordan? Michael is very present in your mind. When you see Jerry Stackhouse go to North Carolina, 6'6" from North Carolina, is it Michael Jordan? Oh, no. It's Jerry Stackhouse. Number 15, North Carolina, 6'6", dunking through the air, Vince Carter. Is it Michael Jordan? No, it's Vince Carter. Harold Miner? Nope. Still not Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant? Close. Not quite Michael Jordan. How many next Michael Jordans were there? Eddie Jones was the next Michael Jordan. There were so many. Michael Finley was the next Michael Jordan. You think his first name had anything to do with that? We keep looking for a model that worked, so much so that we are willing to bypass everything that doesn't agree with what we think that model looks like. The Toronto Raptors had the best success of their entire existence, 30 plus years now, with a 6-foot guard who was stocky, played pressure defense, and was really strong. Does that mean that after years of watching a player like Kyle Lowry, that we are inherently biased to look past issues in players who resemble Kyle Lowry? Players like Marquise Noel, I mean, 5'7", not quite Kyle Lowry, but people can really get on it. Jamal Shed, I love Jamal Shed. I have to think about this a lot. Why do I love Jamal Shed so much? Is it because he reminds me of one of my favorite players of all time? So much so that I'm willing to overlook a lot of stuff. Davion Mitchell reminds a lot of people of Kyle Lowry. Let's just be honest. It's true. And Kyle Lowry's a great player. I don't think Davion Mitchell is Kyle Lowry. I remember Kyle Lowry at 24, 23, 22. This is not close. These are not close players. But nevertheless, you see how the bias can swing you. And Scotty Barnes is the absolute opposite of this, because you've never seen a player like this in Toronto. You don't see a player. Name a player in Raptors history who can guard 5 positions. Name one. Name one single player in Raptors history who could start at center, power forward, small forward, shooting guard, point guard. You will find only one, and that's Scotty Barnes. He is one of one. And so people are like, this doesn't look familiar to me. RJ Barrett, there's been plenty of RJ Barretts. DeMar DeRozan, Vince Carter, Terrence Ross to some extent. We've had plenty of wings like this. Better versions, worse versions, but similar. We've seen this work. Haven't seen this Scotty Barnes guy work. A 6'8" wannabe point guard who sometimes looks like a center, who's kind of unassertive offensively and stuff. We haven't really seen that. But can you really remove the context and the bias of how they look, how they walk, how they move, and see the similarities between Scotty Barnes and Tracy McGrady? Because if you can't, you're crazy. They're there. They're all there. Great scouting requires you to not remove your biases. You're never going to get all of them, but examine your biases. Do I have a bias towards bigs over smalls? If so, how much? What factor, 1.25, 1.5, do I have to add to every player that I have an inherent bias against? I examine my biases when I missed on Walker Kessler and Christian Brown, but I probably have an inherent bias from watching a lot of white North Americans like Christian Laettner and Adam Morrison bust in the NBA, where because I think that the national media tends to overrate North American born white players, that I inherently underrate them. So now every single time I examine a North American white player, I add a factor of 1.25 to whatever I think about them. I'm like, they're just that much better than I think they are. What about players that I really love? Versatile wings? Yeah, I have to decrease because that's my bias. What about Serbian players, man? I'm Serbian. I love Serbian players. Of course, I want to root for my people. I have to remove points with those guys. I always do. Undersized guards, undersized wings, tweeners, combo forwards. Guys like Colin Murray-Boyles, who may project better at power forward than small forward. I have to remove some stuff. Guys who do small intangible things, guys who can't shoot. I like guys who can shoot. So now I have to wonder, how does my loving players who can shoot change and skew my perspective on players who can't? Players who come from small colleges. I'm haunted in my dreams by the Raptors picking Rafael Araujo, a T-Rex armed, older prospect who came from a small college like BYU. Okay? Do you think that BYU in 2003, 2002, when Rafael Araujo was there, versus BYU today is the same program? It is not. But every single time I look at Yegor Demon at BYU, I'm reminded that the last time the Raptors picked a guy from BYU, it was Rafael Araujo. And I have to add a score of 1.25 to 1.5 for Yegor Demon. If you hate Russian people because you have an inherent bias against Russian people, you better start adding some factors to Yegor Demon because the dude is straight up balling. Balling. If you have a particular player type, like a twitchy-ish shot maker, tough shot maker wing that you really like an RJ Barrett, a younger Andrew Wiggins, Latrell Sprewell, I don't know. Think whoever you're talking about. You better start subtracting some points from your evaluation of Ace Bailey. And if you have an inherent bias towards players who maybe are jack of all trades, but not necessarily masters of any, you better start adding like various factors to your evaluation of Cooper Flag. If you have an inherent bias against African prospects, Sudanese prospects, South Sudanese prospects, prospects who didn't come up through the AAU circuit that you watched in the basketball mixtapes, you better start adding some factors to Kaman Malawach because that dude is balling. We all have biases. We all do. I can tell you that biases have led teams to picking DeAndre Ayton over Luka Doncic. Biases have led foreign prospects like Rudy Gobert, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Peja Stojakovic to fall way further than they would have had they come up in American ranks. A bias against out of sight, out of mind led a guy like Ulrich Shamshe to fall all the way down, Shamshi, down to 57th. A bias against perhaps a player who's coming from an unprecedented route. It's that same bias that had a guy like Derek White getting passed up for opportunity after opportunity. You think there's a bias against people who are inherently like attractive versus unattractive? There is. And the worst scout in the world is one who examines a prospect, subconsciously rules the prospect out for a litany of reasons. A face tattoo. I don't know. What does a face tattoo have to do with how a player plays basketball? Seriously, what does it have to do? Right? The school they went to. Yeah, sure. Evaluate it, consider it, but don't completely dismiss it. Right? Slightly shorter arms. Desmond Bane. Great example. The Raptors passed on Desmond Bane. Were they too fixated on wingspan? Because they passed on an all-star level player in Desmond Bane for a guy who's out of the league right now in Malachi Flynn. And they're one of the best scouting departments in the league. Even the Raptors make mistakes. Precious Achiuwa, did they see what they wanted to see? Did they see the next Pascal Siakam? Yeah. And the best thing about scouting models is after every failure, they should improve. You know when they don't improve? You know when scouts don't improve? When they refuse to examine why they missed. Scouts who never evaluate their biases, never examine, never factor for their biases, end up being blind repeatedly to the same factors over and over because they refuse to accept that they have blinders. Luka did not just magically get better. He was always the best player in that draft, and he's always going to be the best player in that draft. Nothing is going to change that at any point unless he literally stops playing basketball, okay? Nikola Jokic is the best player in that draft. It wasn't a miracle. He just missed it. We all missed it. I wouldn't have put Nikola Jokic top 10 in that draft. I certainly wouldn't have, and I was familiar with him. But the model must consistently adapt. So now you got Alperen Şengün falling down to 16th in the 2021 draft. Why? Why? Was it not obvious that he was great? A lot of my friends had him top 6. What prompted a general manager in Sacramento to take Davion Mitchell over Alperen Şengün? What prompted the Golden State Warriors to take Moses Moody over Alperen Şengün? Shit. If Alperen Şengün is in that draft and we do the redraft of the 2021, Alperen Şengün is going top 5 every time. What is it? What was it about Cade Cunningham that seduced everybody in relation to Scotty Barnes? Was it how he looked? Was it how he dribbled? Was it the coolness factor of Cade? Oh, he's so cool, right? I'm not going to say I never understand it. I understand why people have biases. I just wish that people would evaluate theirs. It's really important. I'm going to tell you something. I was subject to a lot of biases throughout my life. I was. When I was younger, I couldn't speak English properly. That led a lot of people to think I was stupid. I was never stupid. But they assumed because I didn't know what certain words meant that I was stupid. Didn't change anything, right? I am inherently unlikable because of how I speak and sometimes just the tone and the unexpressive nature of my voice. So a lot of people miss what I'm saying and they just say, I don't like him. This is something that we go through on the panel all the time, where people in the chat are just responding to me and they're saying, I hate this guy. I want him to shut up. And Chilltown Hoops has said, I don't think y'all are actually listening to this guy. I think you're just focusing on how he's saying it or how slowly he's saying it. But he's actually speaking some really common sense here. But people can't hear it because they don't examine their biases. They really don't, right? B-Ball saying overseas coverage needs to improve. Hi, I'm Dirk saying McCain is a baller. Don't know why people doubted him. Well, there's a lot of reasons why people doubted him. But I'm very happy that Jared McCain is proving everybody wrong. Okay. There is a massive, okay, I'm just going to say this without triggering anybody. There is a massive segment of basketball fans, football fans, generally sports fans that are deeply homophobic, even though he's not gay, but deeply homophobic, deeply transphobic, deeply, I want to say misogynistic and anti-women. So it's been really great to see the women's game. But when you get my point, there's also a segment of the fan base that is deeply racist. So there's a lot of, inherent biases that are baked into. There are many people who are xenophobic. I'm not going to draft that guy. That guy comes from Serbia. I'm not going to draft that guy. That guy comes from, Afghanistan or whatever. There's all these biases, and we see them all in sports. We see them online all the time. And what I'm saying is, once you examine your biases, once you factor for your biases, once you get all that hate out of your heart, you will benefit and prosper in ways you can never imagine. You will see the beauty in people. You will see the goodness in people. You will see the value inherent in people, unchecked and untainted by all of the biases that we grew up with. We all grew up with biases, no matter who your parents were. Unless you had the most fantastic parents, you probably absorbed some of that yourself, right? You probably have connections in your mind that you're not even aware of. Maybe you assume that a lot of poor people are lazy. Maybe that's your assumption. As someone who was poor, I highly disagree. But you might think, because your parents said those people are poor because they're lazy, and you were 5 years old and you just absorbed it. So now you're just kind of burying it down. You won't say it out loud because it's politically incorrect, but you have a bias. You have a bias. So what I'm trying to tell you is basically, whether you're a pro scout or not a pro scout, whether you're in charge of hiring at your company, or whether you're just looking about like who you choose to be friends with, factor out your biases. Consider, that there are people in this world who have gifts that go beyond your first glance. And maybe you might be friends with somebody one day who becomes the best friend you've ever had because you were able to overcome a particular racial bias or a religious bias that you might have had. Interact with everybody. That's the only way to kill biases. You know what I mean? Interact with people. Isolation creates a lot of misguided feelings towards groups, and isolation can also create a lot of derision and division in our society. So I wanted to use the case of Jared McCain rocking out for the Philadelphia 76ers, the prohibitive, in my opinion, rookie of the year, a fantastic player. And I'm so happy for him. I'm very, very happy for him because he has been successful in spite of the noise. What did we miss? What did we all miss? That's the question for the day. Hit like, hit subscribe. Dario saying, how high y'all think McCain was on the Raptors board? Honestly, man, I have no idea. He might have been top 8. He might have been top 10. He certainly seems like the type of guy that the Raptors would really, really value. And a player who has no bias in their hearts? Scotty freaking Barnes, man. I don't want to share all the stories, but I can tell you from, a lot of secondhand information and stuff like that this is a dude who's just so cool with everybody. He doesn't care if you're from Serbia. He doesn't care if you're from Croatia, Japan. He wants to get to know everybody. He's a deeply collaborative person. He didn't have a hateful bone in his body. He's not discriminatory in any sort of way whatsoever. He's not small-minded. He's massively big-minded. He's not against Bruce Brown because he wears cowboy boots and cowboy hat, and he's not against Yuta Watanabe because he has an accent. Scotty's friends with everybody. That's what I love about Scotty. He's exactly the type of person that you would want to be the face of a franchise. Unless, of course, you have a bias against him and how he speaks. But that's your problem. That's not his problem. Talk to y'all later. Have a great one. I'm going to catch y'all after the Cleveland Cavaliers game. Go Raptors. Hope the Raptors win.